course, we've kind of talked about this a little bit last week, but not a lot. How that the Lord and some angels evidently come down and they talk to Abraham, and the Lord tells Abraham what he has planned. And we're going to use Leland's word. The Lord and Abraham reasoned together about how many it would take to save the town or the area, and they get it down to 10, but they can't find 10. And so now they go down to Sodom to check it out. And something occurred to me this morning when I was reading it again, and I've read this story, at least hundreds of times, and it never had occurred to me, why did Lot go towards Sodom to start out with? Better pasture. Now he's in town. What happened to all the stuff? It doesn't tell us, but I'm just wondering what happened to all the animals. He had so many animals that him and Abraham couldn't run in the same area. Now he's in town. It doesn't mention anything. He loses them all evidently because God utterly destroys all that area if he still had them. Yes. What happened to all this stuff? Was he living in town and that stuff outside town, or did he get rid of it all?
He traded them to get out of that tent.
I guess. But anyway, he's in town now. And of course, we talked about a little bit last week about the strangers come to town, and they're going to sleep out in the square. No, you can't do that. You got to come to my house. And of course, he fixes them a fabulous meal. And then here comes all the men. Marcia, it says the men come from all parts of the city. I think that was a question last week. Where'd they all come from? And you made the comment about him about his girls. Because he offered them up instead of the two strangers. According to my commentary, the commentator has two different theories. One of the theory was that because it was custom, if you had guests, to protect the guest at all cost. The second was, remember, these two girls are engaged or betrothed or whatever, that possibly he thought that their husbands or whatever would come to their rescue. But that's his two thinking about it. But he said it definitely was a custom. You did all you could to protect a guest in your house from anybody or anything. Of course, he goes out and tries to argue with them to talk them out of it. And of course, they decide they're going to beat up on him. He's an old man. And the angels reach out and drag him back inside and shut the door, and then they strike the men of that area blind. And they can't even find the door. But you'll hear today about those who want to condone or say that the Bible doesn't speak against this type of lifestyle. Well, God destroyed it because of inhospitality. No, that's not what it was. It was because of all the evilness that went on in that town. God not only destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, but there are other cities that aren't named. It says the cities of the plains. He killed everything, destroyed everything. Nothing is left. And only Lot and his wife and his two daughters get out of town. And then his wife looks back, which they was told not to do, and she is turned into a pillar of salt. So here we have, this is, by wanting the best land, or agreeing to have the best, because he got his pick, then Lot utterly loses basically everything that he thought to gain. He loses all of his stuff. He loses his wife. And he's just an old man with nothing left but 2 daughters. Huh?
Evidently had more, because he had sons-in-law.
Yeah, it's sons-in-law, but these here, of course, according to the way it reads, according to my comment, the sons-in-law, some of the sons-in-laws it mentions was these 2 daughters had future husbands, but they'd already done the trading. Back then they done, for 2 goats you can have her, or 3 cows or whatever, and that kind of stuff. They'd already made the deal. They just hadn't actually officially got married yet. But said it was called sons-in-law. But that's what the angels say. If you got any sons or sons-in-laws or whatever, go get them on, get them out. Well, they couldn't. The only ones he could get out was the ones actually in his household. But they do go to a town that's called Zoar. And according to what I read, Zoar means little town. Basically, that's what it means. Because he told them, we can't get to the mountains quick enough. We'll wait till you get to that town. Then they ended up going the rest of the way in up in the mountains. And then we find that another occasion where people take matters into their own hands, if you want, as a matter of speaking, Lot has 2 daughters, and they're up there in the mountains by themselves, and their husbands or future husbands or whatever, they've been killed. Everybody in that area has been killed. Nothing left. And so they decide to take matters into their own doings, and they get their father drunk and have relations with him, and they both have a child. Did God sanction this kind of stuff? God speaks against the incest. In fact, in the Mosaic law, this was strictly against the rules. But stop and think. Abraham is married to his half-sister. But they have 2 sons, a son apiece. One of them, the tribe of Moab, comes out of that one of them, and one of them, the Ammonites, comes out of the other son. Both of them are bitter enemies of Israel. From then, their descendants are. The only saving grace for the Moabites was what? Anybody remember? What woman came from the tribe of Moab? Ruth. Ruth did. And she was part of the lineage of Jesus itself. She's part of her and Rahab are 2 that are mentioned. Okay. Leland, you got any questions yet? If I start on something else, you want to go back. So
What were the name of the angels?
it doesn't tell us the name of the angels. In fact, if my memory is correct, somebody may want to correct me I want you to if I'm wrong. The scriptures only ever name 2 angels. Is that right? Gabriel and Michael.
There's also one that is related to, it's debated if the name or the title, called the Destroyer.
Destroyer.
In Revelation mentioned also, I believe it is mentioned at Balaam's donkey.
Okay.
Some of the other mention of the actual title of it.
Okay. But it didn't give him a name though, does it?
Yeah, it's debated by people if it's a title or if it's
Yeah, okay. But we have, Gabriel and Michael, are archangels, and, which seem to be a position above the other ones. Now, whether they are the only two, or they simply are the only two that are named archangels, we don't know. But, but he does not name these angels, just like it does not name Noah's wife. If you go to the Ark in Kentucky, you'll have a cafe with Noah's wife's name on the, but unless they've changed it, but they've just made up the name because it doesn't tell us what her name was, or what the son's wife's name was.
This thing was Courtney, she tried to forgive his son-in-law, but they wouldn't come, they thought he was guilty.
Thought he was joking. Go ahead and fire up. Well, that's a good point. Remember we talked about Noah. Noah said, well, you got to get in the boat because it's going to, when never had rain. Well, here he says, we got to get out of town. It's going to rain fire down here, and it's just going to blow this whole place up. Why, you can just hear him say, oh man, you went crazy. And that's basically, some of the things they could have said, They thought he was joking. But he wasn't. I'm sure just like the people in Noah's day, when it started to rain, they knew he was telling the truth, and whenever the fire and brimstone started coming down, they knew that Lot was telling the truth, but it was too late in both cases. Yeah, but they thought he was joking. But he did make an attempt. Chapter 20, we find Abraham uses an old trick that he's used before, and he claims that Sarah is, well, he's really not telling the lie, he's just not telling all the truth, that Sarah is his sister. And of course the king of Abimelech, I believe is his name, he just takes her into the harem, if you will. Now, let's just stop and think about this a minute. How old is this woman? Huh? She's getting close to 90 years old. She's 89 years old because she has a child the next year when she's 90. So she's 89 years old, but she must have been the most beautiful woman in the world because the king, he has a choice of all the women that in town, and well, just put her in the harem with the rest of them.
Of course, they lived a lot longer too.
Yeah, they did. But she might not look, but now she thought like a 90-year-old woman because she said, I've got old, my husband's old. Basically, with the way the King James version reads, we would say today she has already went through menopause. There's no way for me to have kids. So she wasn't looking and thinking to herself like she was a young woman. Yet the king wondering, of course, God visits the kings. Man, you've done a terrible thing. Well, what are you talking about?
But at this time, for a father to get rid of his daughter, they had to pay a dowry or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
So this might have been the thought process of, well, this is his sister, I'll take her off his hands for X number of camels.
Could have been, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Because, in that day and time, people didn't just fall in love automatically. Well, there you go. Well, if there's parents involved, well, somebody wanted some money, or livestock or something, you know. She's kind of pretty. She's worth 2 camels instead of 3, or 3 camels, you know. And that's the way the Rachel and Leah. Rachel evidently was the best looking. That's what's the one that Jacob wanted. But then her daddy said, "Well, it's not right to get rid of the younger one before you get rid of the. I got an older daughter here. I got to get rid of her first." So he slept her in instead.
Rachel's the only one that indicates that he even was.
Yes, in fact, whenever they go back to meet Esau, and Esau's coming, well, he puts the wives and the families in the order of the ones he puts the concubines first, and then he puts Leah next, and then he puts Rachel there with him and her kids. He puts the least favorite out in front. Well, if he's going to wipe them out, maybe he'll get them and get tired, or if he's going to run off with some of them. And he has a lot of heartache in his life, especially about Joseph. But he causes a lot of this too because of his favoritism between one kid and another. Favoritism of wives. I was trying to find I want to read it, didn't want to mess it up.
Verse 3.
No, that's not the one I'm looking for, but God comes to him and said, "You're a dead man. The woman you're taking, she's married." Okay, but then that's not
That's verse 3. 23.
well, one of them is talking about he done it honestly. There it is. That's the one I'm looking for. In the integrity of my heart and the innocence of my hands, I've done this. In other words, I had no idea she was his wife. He told me one story and I believed him. So I had no idea. But yet, God told me, you're a dead man because you took another man's wife. God had plans for this. But now, it doesn't seem like Abraham should have had a little bit of punishment on this deal too, because he's running around afraid, but God doesn't do that. He's always afraid somebody's going to kill him for her. Like I say, she must have been a very beautiful woman, because it's the second time that he's afraid he's going to somebody's going to kill him and take her if they find out it's his wife. But anyway, she is nearly 90. God does not allow Abimelech to get close to her. And her and Abraham, they conceive a child, and Isaac is born. And she's 90 years old. So the promise that God had made to Abraham has finally come to pass. But it came in God's time and not Abraham's time. It came when God was ready for him to. God is trying to instill in Abraham patience. That's what he's trying to do here. We have a son, his name is Isaac. And so Abraham has a son as Ishmael first, and then Ishmael's about 13 or 14 years old. Then he has Isaac, and then he has 6 more sons, I believe it is, with a woman named Keturah after Sarah dies. And so Abraham ends up with 8 sons altogether. And all of them, if we get to them, all of them will have a listing of lots of tribes and what have you after them. But Isaac's descendants are the ones who all the promises are made to. You know, today, most of those people in that part of the world are descendants of these guys right here, basically. And many of them use the excuse, well, we got a right to Israel just like everybody else does because we're children of Abraham too. Well, that's true, they are descendants of Abraham, but they are not the descendants of Isaac, because Isaac was the one that got through, whom God blessed Abraham with. He's the one whom Christ came through, not the other ones. The other ones, God made them great nations, but they've all been fussing and fighting ever since then. Mostly over the same little piece of land. In chapter 21, we won't get very far, but anyway, Abraham has Isaac, and Sarah had, but they have them together anyway. And then Abraham's waited all these years to get this son, and what does God tell him to do? Go out there and kill him. Cook him on a fire. This is all abomination. You know, that's what, you know, the Israelites constantly going back to Baal and some of these other gods, and that's what God condemns them for. When it says in the King James they caused their children to pass through the fire, it means they put them on a fire and burn them. I'm not talking about causing blisters, I'm talking about burn them up. This was abominable, but God told Abraham that's what you got to do. Did Abraham go through with it?
No.
Well, he aimed to.
God gave him something else to burn.
God gave him something else to burn. God stopped him just in time. Said he had a knife drawn, was going to cut his throat. God got him stopped.
The main thing, God was testing him out to see if he
God tested him out.
see if he's going to obey.
Okay. Here's another thought behind this. Abraham was willing to give his not only son, but his son a promise for God, and then God gave his only son so that we could have a promise of eternal life. So God didn't ask Abraham to do anything that he wouldn't do himself. Is that not right? He didn't ask Abraham to do anything that he wouldn't do himself, because he did. Okay, our time is up. Next week will be singing night, I think. So we'll start there on chapter 21, 21st, I guess, something like that.